professor at the School of Security Studies at King's College London. You're joining us from London live. Thank you for being with us. Now that Iran has said we're done with our attack, that was it. There's not going to be a second phase of the attack. And if Israel doesn't counter-escalate, we'll leave it at that. Now that Iran has said that, would it be accurate to say the fate of the region really is in Israel's hands to see what they are going to do now?
Absolutely. I mean, we're still in this spiral of escalation that we've been in, obviously on a much higher level over 12 months or so. And spiral means tit for tat. Every response has another response. Every action has a reaction. We have to expect Israel to respond to this in order to somewhat set the balance of deterrence, if you will, to somewhat try to regain escalatory dominance, as we say. The question is just, what can Israel actually achieve? What is very worrying is that we had Israeli narratives coming out yesterday from commentators, from some politicians, saying that, talking about regime change, historic opportunities to change the balance of power on the ground for good, which suggests quite extensive strikes on Iran. Obviously, what happened yesterday was extremely emotional for the Israelis. These images haven't been seen before in Israeli history, with these sort of projectiles raining down all over the country, with a lot of them not being intercepted. So, they're speaking from an extremely emotional point of view. And the key question now is, to what extent will Israel actually respond to it? And that response will determine what will happen next, as with everything. And hence why it is so immensely important to have some sort of off-ramp to kind of work collectively with the Iranians as well, but also with the Israelis, to kind of seek a diplomatic way out, give the Israelis the opportunity to send a message, but also an off-ramp to make sure that this is where it ends.
The Israeli analysts and others that I was speaking to last night during and after the attack were saying, and you mentioned this, Benjamin Netanyahu might want to use this window, exploit this window as an opportunity to attack Iran in a major way. Maybe go after their nuclear facilities, maybe something a level below that, like oil facilities. Is that a scenario that you think is realistic?
Now, the attack yesterday on Israel was far more severe than in April in terms of the impact. Also, it wasn't telegraphed in that way. So the response that Israel will have to send now has to be harsher than last time. So last time projectiles were fired onto military targets in Iran from Israeli aircraft outside Iranian airspace. So we would probably see an escalation in that respect, with aircrafts going and potentially entering Iranian airspace, and doing so hitting military sites. I think that's to be expected. They're saying they want to hit more strategic targets, more potentially the launch site of the IRGC and these kind of rocket and missile launching battalions. There is talk about the nuclear program, but also here, Iran has kind of put most of its nuclear program, the most important assets of the program, deep underground under mountains. It's not something that will be easily accessible by Israel from the air. So very few options there. I don't see how attacks on non-military oil facilities, refineries as such, or anything in the Persian Gulf would have any impact or would be in any way justified as a form of response to the strike yesterday. But it's also obviously very much likely. But what is key here is that Israel wants to show resolve, strength, but there's also a lot of hubris in terms of thinking that Israel now can achieve something that I think they cannot achieve militarily.
Can I get you to pivot to the border now between Israel and Lebanon? So another military front. Israeli troops are now on the ground in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah says they are repelling them, that Israelis are taking casualties. I know we don't have very much information from now, but what do you make of what we are hearing?
Well, it's very difficult. There is no independent media on the ground. The Israelis obviously don't allow any media. Everything we hear is either from the IDF or from Hezbollah, both of them belligerent parties. Both of them obviously want to tell their side of the story. What we can say, though, is that the IDF hasn't made a lot of progress. I mean, there's been a lot of rallying troops, and what I can see at the moment are two main corridors, one in the northeast and one somewhere at the center of the border, where they have crossed in. There's been heavy fighting yesterday. There's been artillery strikes, a lot of leveling the ground with airstrikes as well. So we can expect that the main thrusts will come along these sort of corridors. But we don't know how much progress has been made. But all we know is from both sides they've said there was heavy fighting. And obviously what happened last night will have an impact on how quickly the IDF can progress, because, mind you, the IDF is already bogged down in a war in Gaza, bogged down in a war in the West Bank, and now has to open a front against Iran and maintain that front in the north. And so I think they're kind of spread very thinly. And in terms of capacity, we'll find it very, very hard to make rapid sort of advances. And Hezbollah is waiting for this. Hezbollah has been well prepped to fight a war on the ground. They've been waiting for it, and Israel is giving them the war that they wanted on the ground.
Andreas Krieg, Associate Professor at King's College London, thank you very much for your time this hour. Let's take you now to